In this tutorial, I'd like to show you how to set up basic dialogue upon interacting with a character. So you see already we have an animation set up to play when the character overlaps with this other animated character. Then he goes back to his idle position. But what I'd like to happen is a bit of dialogue to show up upon this overlap. So let's see how we do that. First thing we'll need to do is grab a trigger box. I'm gonna make that a little bit bigger. Okay, now this trigger box we need to add a blueprint to. And so within the trigger box blueprint, let's go to the collision component. We can go down here in the details panel and grab the two nodes that we need, which are on component begin overlap and on component end overlap. I'm just going to grab the end one, 2. So we want this to happen when we overlap with the side scroller character. So we need to cast to that character to start. And let's copy and paste this. So before we go any further here, we should probably set up a dialogue that we want to see when we overlap with this character. So let's go over here to user interface. Let's make a widget blueprint. And we will call it dialogue. Dialogue HUD BP. So if we click into that, let's make something really simple here. So he's bumping into him. Let's call it get away from me. So I'm just gonna change the color, change the size a little bit. Then let's size this to content. Let's anchor this to the center. We'll move it up a little bit. Let's compile and save, and now we have a really basic dialogue widget that we can use. So going back to our trigger box blueprint, let's create this widget and add it to the viewport. So we need to select the class, and that's going to be this. This I made earlier, so what we're doing right now, make sure you select exactly the name of what you've called it. Nope, that's all we need. So we also need to create a variable reference to the widget. So let's call it, let's just call it widge. Let's compile, save, and we need this to be a user widget object reference. And let's go ahead over here in the details panel and make sure this is set to what you've named it. So we called ours dialogue HUD BP. So now that we've created that variable, we need to set it here. And then we can add to the viewport, with the target being the widget. And the same thing down here, when we leave this overlap, we want the dialogue to go away. So in order to do this, we need to use a node called remove from parent. And if that's not popping up for you, just uncheck context sensitive. So the target here is going to need to be this widget again. So let's see if that works here. What a friendly guy. So every time we run into him, we get this dialogue and we get this animation. Pretty basic, but should lead you to more complex things in your game. One other thing I'm going to add. In between cast to side scroller character and creating the dialogue, I'm going to add a really handy node called do once. Because I would only like to see this dialogue once because we know what it says, so we don't want him to say the same thing every time. So let's see how this looks. And then we do it again, and he doesn't say it. Perfect.